All right, a very good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second of our workshop. And, thank you for making time to be here. I am looking forward to today's presentation. Today, we have a guest with us. It's called Dr. Loice Atukunda. She's a friend that I've involved in many of these discussions. She'll be telling you more about herself. She is based at Cobhams and spearheading a lot of research-based work. And so today, we are privileged to have Dr. Loice with us. Dr. Loice, you're welcome. I hope you can proceed. It is 5:30, so we should be good to go.
All right. Thank you, Professor Gidudu. It's a pleasure for me to be here this evening, and I can see 11 participants. Are we expecting more?
Yes, we can't tell how many, but in the interest of time, let us start, I think.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here again. And I want to, first of all, congratulate you for getting on a master's degree program. It's usually a bold step, and I can imagine you're putting in a lot of investment in terms of time, putting in a lot of money, the intellectual effort that you're putting in cannot be underestimated. So well done. And I'm usually very happy to see people who are developing themselves, who are boldly stepping forward to be better. So it's a pleasure. Even though we are meeting virtually, I hope that I will meet you at some point and we can continue to interact, because the research journey is almost just beginning at a master's level. And now that you even chose Plan A, it looks like you are interested in research, and maybe we'll meet again somewhere. But it's a pleasure, and I hope that throughout the session, as we interact, I may be able to know who you are. But I can see you are 11 human beings on the call, and 10, I think, plus me. So it's a pleasure to meet you. I imagine that now you are done with your coursework, or you're almost done, and you're going to embark on your research project, and I wish you the best on it. So I hope the next 1 hour I will be somebody who invests in your efforts to complete research, because usually research goes around circles and circles and circles. But I hope that tonight I may be able to, however small, contribute to your ability to complete on time, not only to do your project effectively, but also efficiently. That's very key. And so we are going to start now, and I will just share my slide. Okay, so my name is Loice, and probably I've been introduced. I come from the social science background. So I teach human resource management and organizational behavior. So I don't have a lot of experience in engineering, but I know that research has some basics, some things that we can share together. And I've done this with Anthony now, I think, for the last, is it 2 years, 3 years? Now that he calls me back, I imagine that I am relevant to your department, Anthony.
Oh, yes, you are.
Yeah, so I hope that even though I may not be able to get examples that you're familiar with, I hope I can still make sense to you. So I'm going to now start by asking you a question. So of course, our topic is doing an effective literature review. Now, effectiveness in management, we think it's about doing the right thing. So if you do the right how do you do the right literature review? But as we go through this, I hope we can also talk about efficiency, which is doing it with the appropriate amount of resources. So time, you don't want to waste a lot of time, but you want to do the right thing also efficiently. So that's going to be our topic tonight. But before we begin, I would like to give you an opportunity to please let me know what you know about literature review. And you can put up your hand, or you can just slot your responses in the chat. Please let me know what do you know about literature review? In 1 word, 2 words, a sentence, I don't know, but what do you know? Herbert, are you there? Herbert, are you there? What do you know about literature review?
Literature review is seeing what has been done in the particular topic you're trying to do.
Okay, seeing what has been done. And yeah. Lillian?
Reviewing what someone has written and finding the gaps and making sure that you critique where necessary by filling the gap using your topic or what you want to research about.
Don't we just give you the mic and you be the facilitator tonight? So you review, you find the gap. Those are big words. And Who else? I can see Hilda. What do you know about literature review? Okay, I see in the chat that it's about knowing what has been done before. Very good findings about the methods available. Any questions? Any things that actually bother your mind about literature review? Do you have any burden? Why do you think tonight is an investment for you? Why do you invest your time 1 hour in this session? Do you have any issues about literature review? Anything that is bothering you? Again, you can, I can choose you. You can put up your hand, or you can, okay, Lawrence, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Well, about literature review, my thinking, digging to know the current state of your topic, but also why I'm here, why I would really, which I should go to the end of the lecture of this presentation, is that sometimes when you're reviewing the articles that you go online and they are not there. I'm aware in this workshop that has been organized by our dean. Tomorrow I'll be having somebody from a library. But the most challenging part has been like you looking for an article which looks very interesting, but you cannot get it online. They're saying you have to maybe access to your university or whatever. Those are like the challenges that I face. But basically, I know about literature reviews. You're looking for the current state of what you're researching, how they are doing it, maybe how they have been done, and the advantages, disadvantages of the methods and the rest. Thank you.
So yeah, that can be very difficult if you find articles that are not on open access. I've not used SkyHub. I've just typed it in the chat, but I've had people who just take the document identification number into SkyHub. You can find this on Google, and then you're able to get those articles that are not accessible easily. I subscribe to a Facebook group, and on that Facebook group, you just give, there are 2, I think 3 administrators there who are really, really committed to availing literature, which is otherwise not available. And you just give them the link, or you can just give them the title as well, or sometimes the URL for the topic, for the article, and they dig it out for you. I'll share that Facebook group with Anthony at some point, and you can use that. And of course, I've had somebody's coming from the library, they'll give you a lot more tips. Okay, then Bruno is usually troubled by how much do I have to write down in literature review chapter, and how to link the literature review chapter to the research topic. This is very nice. We'll be talking about coherency in your write-up. So there's a relationship between chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and the rest of the chapters of your dissertation, or your proposal. If you're still writing your proposal, they have to be coherent. There has to be one thread going through that. So we will deal with that, Bruno. Good. My challenge is critically finding the gap from someone's work. And yet that's your key responsibility in writing literature. So we are going to also see how you can critically find the gap from someone's work. Very good to hear that we shall be dealing with some of the things that trouble you. Is there anything else that has been hot, big trouble for you around literature review? Anybody? Let me give you just a few seconds before we begin. Citing the different work done. How do I cite the different work done? I'd not thought about citing, but maybe I can quickly talk about it. Maybe Anthony can advise which referencing style do you recommend to use in your school?
I think the university one is APA.
Given PDF documents that may explain how to use APA in in-text citing, but also how to write your references. So this is a very technical question, which we might not cover it tonight, but find APA on YouTube, or some documents that you can read, and maybe the library might also give you some handbooks on how to cite literature review sources. Okay, so I think let's move on. Next, I wanted to ask what you expect from this, but I think now I have an idea. So I'll just move on to the next slide. Okay, Bruno says, especially electronic papers without details like the year of publication. Okay, if you find something that something is missing on an article, you can always contact the authors. I think they would be happy to give you the details on how how they can be cited, because when somebody publishes work, they're usually happy when it is cited. So in that case, you can, if you find that they don't have the details, like the year of publication, you can contact the authors directly. It's not very difficult to find them. You just, now with the information era, we can be able to reach out to people and get quick response from them. Okay, so it's good to know that this is not new to you, literature review, and I now have an idea of the things that have been bothering you. But first of all, to say that your project, your research project is going to cover basically 5 questions. And of course, they can be more than this, depending on the discipline or the requirements of the department. But most projects, you have to explain what your project is about and why it is important. So this covers your chapter 1 of your proposal and also your dissertation when you're done with your research. And in here, you talk about what the problem is. And from that problem, you will say, okay, now that this is an issue and it is an important, it is worth our time and money and intellectual effort. And so you begin now to show what you're going to do in order to actually ease that problem or knowledge gap or practical issue. And the way you do that, you do it by stating your research objectives. What are you going to do about it? Exactly what? And they need to be very fine. You can also do research questions. It is going to be a qualitative study, or you can already do some hypothesis. When there are many, there are hypotheses, so that you can go and test out theory about the issue that is bothering you. You have to define it in terms of variables. If it is, it has a causal effect, like which one is a dependent variable and which one is an independent variable. And even those variables, you end up breaking them down to what we call constructs, smaller parts of those variables. So that's going to be your chapter 1. And of course, as you write what your project is about and why, in research is not about opinions, but stating facts, stating plausible information, plausible evidence for your arguments. If you say there's a huge problem, we have a lot of climate change effects in Kampala, it's not your opinion, it's something that you bring out from literature. So basically literature, use of literature begins in chapter 1 as well. But of course, when your project is well defined and why it is important, then you need to do something further. Usually I don't know if we can invent a wheel where something has not actually been researched about, because most of the things that we see around us, other people somehow have tried to do an inquiry about them. So the noble thing for us to do is to go back and say, okay, this is an issue, it is troublesome, but what do the other authors say and what am I bringing to the table? We're going to talk a little bit more about this. So you've already been mentioning to me that literature review is checking what other people have written and critiquing and trying to find the gap. So this, what are you bringing on the table, can actually also be termed as the gap. So then when you have said what your project is and why it is important, and you have found out the gaps in the literature where other people have not sufficiently talked about this issue, then you mention your methodological approach. So we found this gap, and this is how we are going to find data to be able to contribute to the talk. So which means that actually your methodological approach cannot be divorced from the first 2 chapters. It has to stem from the first 2 chapters. It has to be related to what you've been talking about in chapter 1. And of course, you mention what you found out, and you also mention what sense you have made out of the results of your study. Okay, so let's now go to what do the other authors say and what are you bringing to the table? It's the discussion for this evening, and that's effective literature review. So why do we do literature review? And this African proverb puts it out clearly that until lions have their own historians, tales of hunt will always glorify the hunters. So it's a proverb, but it clearly puts out the rationale for literature review. So because within the jungle and the hunting, they are lions, they are the kings of the jungle. So until the lions have their own story, and the hunt will always glorify just the hunters. Okay, so you can think about this, and I would like you to tell me what you think about. So Mukasa is a community development worker who lives in the city. In 2021, he attended a meeting in his village. He had a lot in his mind concerning events in his community and would have loved to contribute, but he arrived late. What would you advise Mukasa to do in this matter? Any ideas? Anybody? Leah, what do you think Mukasa should do? He knows a lot about community development, but he's arrived late for the meeting. He needs to identify people in the different areas of concern. Okay, yeah, correct. Anything else? There's been a discussion going on in the village and he's arrived late. So what should he do? Musa, Lindwa Musa?
Yes, doctor. I think Mukasa should make government a write-up and document what his ideas then for the village.
So what should he do with that document? Should he do with his write-up?
He should present the village committee members.
Bruno says he should read the minutes from the meeting, and I think that's a brilliant answer. Before making any contribution, he had to ask himself what would have been discussed before him. And this actually summarizes what the whys of literature review, that in a way, if you're going to study about effects of climate change in Kampala, you are in sort of coming to a table or in a room where people have already been discussing that. And you knock on the table and say, ladies and gentlemen, you've talked a lot about climate change and in urban places. And I am also coming from Makerere. I'm doing my master's and I want to join the table and talk. The question that they will ask you is, what do you want to say? What are you trying to know? What they've been saying? It's difficult for you to answer that question. So it's important to find out the people who have already been on this discussion table, what are they saying? And for you to be able to tell them what your contribution is, but you need to analyze it strong. You need to check where their arguments are. Mention this. You talk about planting trees in combating climate change. I talk to you about involved controlling climate change or mitigating it. If that's something that on this table we seem not to know yet, and I want to come and join club. So this is in simple terms literature review. What are the other authors saying, and what am I bringing to the table? What's the gap in their discussion? And so I hope that's clear. Which means that you're going to be doing literature review on for your study. It's not just any amount of literature review falling from anywhere, but the discussion that has been going on before you, and what the gap is and what your contribution is going. So how do you do it effectively? Is one thing that you to do, and I would like to encourage you, if you're not if you don't enjoy reading, just encourage yourself to read. Your review and your writing is as good as your reading. So reading is the chief thing that you need to do, because otherwise, how will you know what other people are saying? How will you understand the gap? So reading, it's going to take a lot of reading. And when I say a lot, sometimes people can say how much is a lot. That's also another question. You get somewhere where you feel there's some level of saturation, like, okay, now I know what the arguments or what the different viewpoints of the key people in this literature, and I know where to base myself. I know where to position, where I can just slot myself. I can see on the table there's that particular empty chair. If I tell them that I'm coming with this idea, they will pull that chair for me. It's empty. So then after you have read and felt that you've got to that level of saturation, you can write. And of course, you read while writing. You read while writing so that you don't forget your ideas. So the next thing that you need to do is to identify the knowledge frontiers and what needs to be discussed. So like I already mentioned, you need to check, what do we know? Where's the gray area? In this particular issue, which one is the gray area? And you mark it. And sometimes when you mark that gray area, or that is not yet clear, for example, if you say, okay, I'm studying involving children in mitigating effects of climate change, you might read and find out that actually somebody has done a study about involving children, but then maybe they are talking about children as teenagers. They are 13 to 18 years old. And for you, you might be thinking about involving toddlers. So we know what children can do, but we know what children can do as far as they're 18 years old or 15 years old, but toddlers, we still don't know. So find what needs to be discussed as well, because also you don't go and talk about everything about climate change. You need to find out, how do I zero on the right thing, how do I be effective, so that I'm not just rambling around climate change and mitigating climate change and things like that. How do I zero in? You need to also determine that. And the next slide is some tips on how you can do that. I already mentioned that your proposal, the chapters of your proposal, stem from each other. There's a coherent flow from chapter 1 up to the last. So even literature review is never divorced from chapter 1. So you go back and look at what your research questions or objectives are. And the question, a good question to ask is, for example, to what extent have the other authors answered my research questions? So you see, you cannot just write any literature review that is not actually related to your research questions. So that's something that you can go with as you read. You're looking at that. So if you're talking about mitigating climate change through play, the activities that children do while playing and how that mitigates climate change, then you may read an article that talks about children planting trees, but that's not what you're looking for. So yes, children have been involved, but they've been planting trees. We still don't know how their games or how their playtime can help us to mitigate climate change. So that's one area that can help you to know which literature you should read, and also help you to reduce on going on to very irrelevant literature. So your research questions and objectives are a good place to look to. You can also look at the concepts that you're studying. So if you're studying mitigation of climate change, if you're studying involvement of children, if you're studying play for children, you're not studying their nutrition, you're not studying their education, you're not studying their culture, you're not studying the home environment, whether they are coming from single parents or whether they are coming from, they are living with both parents. The concepts that you're studying give you an idea of which literature that you should engage. Also, the good place to also look at is your conceptual framework. So your framework, you can look at the variables. I think this should be conceptual framework, not theoretical framework. If you said you're looking at mitigating climate change, or what involvement of children in mitigating effects of climate change, those are the big variables, but how have you defined your variables? And then those kinds of words or the definitions or how you have operationalized your variables will help you will guide you on your literature search. Then you know which keywords you'll use in the search engines, using the variables or even the constructs. But also research is a little bit political as well. You need to always remember what your department requires, and I'm sure there are guidelines that you're given and there are expectations. Different institutions have different expectations. You need to keep those in mind. But also be very keen at what your supervisor is interested in. So your supervisor might give you ideas on what they expect. So that's also a good place for you to how much you should look out for in your literature. Should I give you 1 or 2 minutes to ask if you have a burning question before we move on? Anybody has a question, we can pause it here, or just slot it in the chat. I am monitoring the chat. I can, as we go on, please let's interact with me. Okay?
Excuse me, I would like to inquire
About when you're reviewing literature, is it necessary that you review an objective per objective, or it's a random review?
It helps me not to miss out something, but then also sometimes the objectives are a bit general, and the conceptual framework helps to break down that generalization. It becomes a little bit more specific. So I go and pick a construct to check what does literature say about them. Because if you're doing a causal kind of an inquiry or analysis, means that one construct is influences the other. So what I do is to go and check literature with around constructs. But like I mentioned, actually, your conceptual framework comes from your research objectives. If you look at your research objectives and you can't see that information in your conceptual framework, then you're doing different things altogether. Your variables should come from your objectives. What you want to research should be broken down in your research objectives, and then should be in your conceptual framework. And they are not sort of ambiguous. Then you can do objective by objective review literature on that. But if they are ambiguous a little bit, and sometimes it happens following the constructs in your conceptual framework, other people do it randomly. But maybe at this point, I would like to ask Anthony if he has a comment about this, because I don't think it's cast in stone idea. Anthony, are you there? Is there a specific guideline on how students should review literature? Is it objective by objective, or should it be random? Do you have an idea?
We don't have guidelines, so it many times depends on the supervisor and how the supervisor guides them. But essentially, we should see how your objectives are reflected in the literature, how the methodology comes through the literature. Yeah, that should be clear.
That's the bottom line, that actually, because we said my objective is this is what I want to do. Yeah, okay, that's what you want to do. But the question is, how about the people who have already been talking about this? You want to come to the roundtable discussion on this issue. How about the people who have been talking about this? This is why the emphasis is that whatever approach that you use, and maybe your supervisor will have preference, you should be able to show that actually you're coming with, you've done an analysis of what already exists. Okay, and then somebody says variables like themes. Okay, so I think in social sciences, we use conceptual frameworks and variables when we are, in most cases, when we are going to measure relationships in quantitative studies. Like I already mentioned, if you're going to, I should find another example. Maybe let me ask a volunteer, what kind of study are you doing? Maybe Bruno, you'd like to answer that. What kind of study are you doing, so we can see if we can derive variables from your study?
Yes, good evening, Doctor. Fine. So my study is basically to assess the accuracy of different geopotential models over Uganda. So the specific objective one is to assess how do those different models fit over the existing infrastructure in Uganda. And the second objective is basically to look at those models, but in terms of degrees, that if we alter their degree and their order, how will they sit over the current infrastructure? That, in a nutshell, that's my research.
So now I'm going to just attempt. So altering those models includes what? It means that you're going to change in the structure of the model.
What happens is that these models have like coefficients. It's like saying x1, x2, x3, x4. But the more you have, the more those numbers keep on increasing, the better. But if you trim it and you stop like at x4, so you test at x4, how will the model act? At x10, how will the model act? That's what happens.
Let's say that you're going to be looking at alteration of the model versus performance. Okay?
Yes.
It's performance, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so what do you think, which one affects the other? Does performance affect alteration, or alteration affects performance?
Alteration affects performance.
Okay, so this, you're going to be actually measuring a causal relationship when you alter a model and remove some variables in it, or if you remove an X from a model, how is it going to perform? So you're looking at alteration as that can be a variable, and performance a variable, and one affects the other. So performance depends on alteration. So performance becomes a dependent variable, and then alteration becomes an independent variable. But if you're not doing a causal relationship, or not, like the first objective, could you please say it again? The first objective?
The accuracy of those different models over the existing.
Okay, so there you're not measuring a cause and effect. You're only assessing. Maybe at that point you're likely not to use variables, but or test the relationship between variables. But when we do a study where one aspect is dependent on another aspect, then we are those are what we call variables. I don't know whether they are also called themes in your discipline. Probably yes. Is this like that, Anthony? Variables also.
You actually brought it out very well here. I think we can identify the dependent variable and the dependent variable. We would still call them variables, not themes.
And I think this issue is going to be covered a little bit more when you get somebody from the library. But you can ask experts in your area for key authors. So even if it's not your supervisor, but if you know somebody is working on these models or knows some knowledge about it, or in your department, or even people outside your university, people now are very available, really, and information is open, and everybody's willing to help. So if you are told, oh, there's somebody who actually has been publishing around this kind of work, just send them an email and ask them, who else? I know you are very good at this, but who else is on that round table? Who are your colleagues? Then if you find their articles, so for example, if you think that I am a guru in your area and I've published a lot in your area, then you go and find my publications, and then go to the citations, the people that I have cited. In a way, you're getting to find the people who are talking around this topic very easily, because if one of your key authors is Professor Y, when Professor Y is talking, he'll be citing his fellow gurus in the area. So just run to the reference list and see the people that they have cited. And there are very many search engines. Of course, Google Scholar is the one that is very common, but ResearchGate, I like ResearchGate because at ResearchGate, you can actually, somebody already asked if I find an article that is not accessible. You go to ResearchGate and see if the author has published it there. If not, send them a message from ResearchGate and request for text. They will usually drop it in your email. And then there are others as well. I was checking this worldwidescience.org and science.government. I think these are more into your area, but of course also Microsoft Academic and many others. But Google Scholar and ResearchGate can be your... First, you need to summarize and synthesize the work. So somebody asked how to critique, but first of all, in your own words, you can summarize the key findings relevant to your, you need, like I said, you read a lot, but of course you read writing notes. You need a research notebook. So you write, summarize, okay, they used the word children in this study, but actually they meant 18-year-olds. I can see they've also put in some some who were less than 10 years old, but why did they put those in? Try to summarize. And this study was made in this area. Their key finding is this. So you can make those summaries, but also try to summarize what you already know about that topic, or about the objective, or about the construct, because small summaries in your literature review write-up help the reader. So in most cases, if the examiner is not going to read the whole chapter, at least they should be able to read the summaries that you make in the middle of the chapter. Find what are the key arguments, what are most people saying. Maybe they are saying mitigating climate change is a lost battle. We are going to, the world is going to be on fire soon. That's the argument. What are other people pushing forward around this area? What are they saying? And then also the common methods that are used. This is why I say that actually your literature review falls into your methodology a lot. Because if you find a gap, then that gap tells you what kind of methodological approach that you should adopt to collect data that will give you information to fill that very gap. Okay, summary. Okay, and then critique. Someone said it's so difficult to critique. I think some of the sessions that I've done with Anthony were about critical reading and writing, especially when we have been used to an education system where the teacher tells us everything and maybe we're not supposed to question it, but to cram it and put it in the exam, a postgraduate level of studying, that kind of spoon feeding and reproducing what the teacher mentioned somehow is not expected. You are expected to actually evaluate things, evaluate that article, because academic writing is not always exhaustive. It's not that they are wrong or they are not good. We are not criticizing, but we are evaluating what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of that work. In a respective, you have to somehow respect the authors, but you pull out those issues. And I don't think the authors usually claim that this is perfect. They will actually write at the end, they may write the gaps that are in their studies. So evaluate those strengths and weaknesses, put on those glasses. It's a professor who wrote it, but is there something that is still missing? And the other way you can critique the work is to look at how the different authors differ from each other. Is it very different? Is there controversy? So one author says this, but the other author says that. How different is it from the other authors? So as we write literature, we compare, we critique the different studies, the different authors, and then we can come up with something. So you say, while this group of authors say this issue is like this and like this, and they have used that and that and that, the other group of authors have come up with a different idea or have got a different approach, and they've come up with something different. And then you can also look at what views need further argument, explanation, test, or proof. So we still don't know, we still are not sure of something like that. That's also part of critiquing literature, which means that although they have moved 2 miles, we still have another 3 miles to finish up the 5-mile journey. What evidence is lacking or inconclusive or contradicting or even too limited? So you can go with these questions as you read with these kinds of glasses and be asking as you read the article. Don't just merely read it, but ask these questions. What research designs or methods seem unsatisfactory? So if I did study employee performance management, and looking at literature in human resource management, especially in Africa, most of the people who do this kind of research, they do surveys with managers. They send out questionnaires and managers tell them about performance. And I thought, okay, well, they've made conclusions about HRM in Africa, but they haven't talked to the employees, like been with them and participated with them in what they are doing, to hear their story, to hear their side of the story. And so as I was reading this literature, I could see that the managers who are saying this is how people should be managed, but how about the employees? What are they saying? And when you send out a questionnaire to a manager, they can sit in their office and they tick the boxes and they go away. But when you do like interviews or participative observation with employees, you may get more information than what surveys can give. So as you read such articles and as you write, pull out things like that. Or this research was done with children, but the children were interviewed when it was school time, and school time they are very busy and their minds are so concentrated on other things. They don't play well, they don't engage in their games well, but we are going to do this study during holidays, and that might show us something different from what the study about school time provided. So I think somebody who asked how I can critique, you now have a bit of an idea, but after you have, I mentioned that you can put questions in the chat. So after you have summarized, because summarizing, by the way, if you just summarize and your literature review chapter is about so-and-so said, so-and-so said, then that one said, then that one said, your examiner is going to say that your literature review is very descriptive. You've only described what other people said. Until you move from summarizing to this slide, that's when you would have actually done a literature review. Then otherwise they will say, no, you're very descriptive. And if you're just very descriptive, it means that you haven't actually weighed, what the other villagers said at the meeting. But if you bring in this critique and compare, then there you would have done. Okay, so thank you so much for that feedback. I'm glad that I'm communicating layer. Thank you. Okay, so after you've done your summary and your critique, then you need to put it all together. In other words, now you're ready to talk at the village meeting. You're already very ready now to know what you know about this field, and you're not coming from an informed point of view and begin to talk about things. Sometimes you can read some write-ups. Students will say, there isn't much literature about this area. We do not know, things like that. When you get to Viva, or even to your examiner, they might know a lot about this, and then somehow they pull the rug under your feet and say, no, actually, we know what happens in this. So then you are able to, if you have plausible evidence after you've shown what is known in the field, then you have plausible evidence to show your gap, to show the gap. You can be confident about it. You can say this area is still the gray area. It is worth our effort to research about. And if you're doing your proposal, of course, you're making a case. Please allow me to go to the field to collect data about this issue. I am very aware of what other people have said, but we still don't know about this area, and it is important. So you say why it is, why we should write about it, or why we should do research about it, and how it will contribute to the body of knowledge that you have already reviewed, but also probably practically in practice, these issues you would have said them in chapter 1 when you're talking about your problem. You would have had facts, and you're able to say there's an issue, and in literature now we don't see light being showing us what we should do with this issue. And then, of course, how your research will contribute is still it's a problem gap that your research is addressing. And putting this all together, I don't know the structure of your proposal or your dissertations, but in most cases at the end of the literature review chapter, there's a summary section, So if you're reviewing objective by objective, at the end of each objective, you put there a bit of a summary, a small summary to guide the reader But at the end, then you need to put it all together and have that summary written very well. And you don't have to be modest. You have to be very clear and assertive that we know this, we don't know this, and it is important that we know, because this is how it is going to contribute to knowledge and practice. And if you put that very well, it will now guide your reader to the next chapter, the methodology. Okay, if this is the issue and you've expounded it properly, so now let's go to the methodology chapter. Okay, and now I would like to introduce to you to a website that is really key, because when your academic writing is academic writing, I didn't know how else to say it, because it's not the same as writing any other thing. A journalist can write, they put there their opinions. You are used to also WhatsApp and social media. You can write a blog, but when you're writing your proposal or a dissertation, it's an academic piece of writing, and it has to be that. So you need the right phrases, and this website is very key. I'll just give you a screenshot of part of it. So I went to that website, and then / being critical. Of course, on the left there is a menu, so you can find being cautious, classifying and listing. You find giving examples. If you're giving examples, what phrases can you use? If you're defining terms, what phrases can you use? If you're describing trends or quantities or explaining causality, what kind of phrases can you use? So now I clicked on being critical. I don't know whether it's readable from your end. Is this readable? Yeah. So as an academic writer, you are expected to be critical of the sources that you use. Yeah, like Leah said at the beginning, this essentially means questioning what you read and not necessarily agreeing with it just because the information has been published. That's a big point. Even though it is Professor Mamudani who has published it. So being not just accept something as being require you to identify problems with the right. I mentioned if they did a study with Uganda where kids are really pumped at school and they can, okay, they've made conclusions from this study, but there's something missing with their methodological approach. They observed kids when they were very tired in the evening. They can't play the same way they play when it is holiday time. So it can require to identify problems with the writer's arguments or methods, or perhaps to refer to other people's criticisms of these. Yeah, so Loice said this study did not include children, did not handle children during holidays, which is true. But also, I think it is limited because the children that they were dealing with were children who are living in urban centers, and maybe they have no idea on how to plant trees or something like that. Or perhaps refer to other people. Constructive criticism goes beyond this by suggesting ways in which a piece of research or writing could be improved. Now, have I whetted your appetite to actually go to this website to see how it also has very good ideas, that you do not stop at saying that they dealt with children when it was school time. You need to mention that they could have been tired, and it's better that we do it during holidays when they are more relaxed. So you need these things of writing, how the writing could be improved. So being against is not enough. We also need to develop habits of constructive thinking. And then it's a very, very good website because it will also show you how to actually give you some phrases on how to highlight inadequacies in the previous studies, identify weaknesses in a single study or paper, because here in previous studies, for me, what I mentioned to you that most studies about HR were with managers, I was talking generally to most scholars. But then you also need phrases on when you are, or how to offer constructive suggestions. Page, I will show you. I don't know what I clicked on introducing the critical stance of particular writers. So how do you introduce that? So their argument, if you're writing about what other people wrote, how do you introduce that? So they give you a whole list of examples. Jones 2003 has also questioned why the author challenges the widely held view that Smith 1999 takes issue with the contention that, so I think I will stop here with this website, but it's just planned. My dear friends, you don't want to to do your research project forever. If you haven't, probably you have, because I'm talking to very intelligent people from engineering, very smart people. Plan very well. When are you going to write your literature review chapter? How are you going to be doing it from home? Are you going to be having 2 days hiding in the library? Who do you need? What do you need? You need a babysitter to keep at home, because in most cases we do a master's degree when we are also running other things. Leah, is it true of you? Is that true of you? So plan carefully. And also these plans, they must be time bound. Put their time. If you say I will do literature review and you have not said when you need to finish what, it's very difficult. So I encourage you, learn how to use a literature manager. They're not very difficult to use. They are user friendly. And I think there are people in the library that can help you to do that. They will make your life very easy. Very easy. If you're still doing it manually, it can be very, very difficult. So learn to use, and I think if it needs a license, the library can do that for you. The other tip that I can say to you is that you keep sticky notes near you in your handbag, near your bed, because sometimes ideas are going to fall in your head, and if you don't put them down, you will forget. You'll be saying, what was that good thing that I dreamt about? But if you dream about something, wake up and write it down on a sticky note so that in the morning it can still be there. Or even when you are in a party somewhere and you are enjoying and you can see something happening, your sticky notes should be with you and you write them, write those ideas. Write in groups. Actually, writing groups, we call them, I am involved in a network for postgraduate research students and academics. It's an inter-university network. One of the things that we are trying to encourage is for people to be in writing accountability groups. Because sometimes when you write your plan, and you share it with 2 or 3 friends, they can check and say, maybe this is ambitious, or yeah, this is really good. But then they also come to you and say, hey, you said you are going to be handing your first draft of your literature review chapter at the end of this week. So how is it going? Is there anything that can help you with? And you can actually even read each other's work and give each other feedback. Life is not supposed to be done alone. It's much easier if you do these things with other people. So start writing groups and read together and write together. If you can't crack an article, you just ask somebody, do you know how to find this article? And then they bring it to you. And be accountable to each other. Knock this master's degree on the head and move on to other things. Yeah, and I think I've gone way over an hour. I'm really sorry.
Thank you very much, Loice, for that presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Dr. Loice Natukunda for that brilliant presentation. I know she mentioned that she comes from a background of social science research, but truth be told, she is actually a scientist with a biological sciences background, which was why she was able to decipher Bruno's work expertly. She is actually a biological scientist at heart and has gone on to broaden her perspective. So if she was to be paid as a scientist, she would qualify for it. So Dr. Loice, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, amongst the key points that I hope you appreciated was 1, literature review is not random. It is deliberate, it is intentional. It takes time. And for you to do a good job, you do not wake up and say, I have done literature review. And literature review should guide us in refining our studies, refining our problem statements, refining our objectives, giving us our methodology. And later on, it will also guide us in the discussion of our results. I think it was Lawrence who talked about challenges of accessing literature. Tomorrow, we shall be having the college librarian to take us through the resources that we have available that you can access as a student. The university invests a lot in these electronic resources, and we shall be discussing how to access them. And the challenge we have is that in spite of the huge investment that has been made, we don't get time to access these resources. So we shall be learning how to access them. Dr. Loice talked about the literature management system. And on Friday, we shall have a presenter taking us through one of the commonly used literature management systems that we have. So Loice, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making time to be here. As we mentioned, and I think Dr. Loice alluded to this, we really are aiming at you finishing this research within this academic year. So we want you to be defending by October, November. And for you to be able to do excellent work, we need you to be grounded in literature, in how to collect literature, where to get it, organizing your work. And so I am hoping that of the many students who are here, probably around 15, 14 of you, I am hoping that come the end of the second semester, this will be 14 dissertations off for examination by July, August. So that is my intention. I don't know what yours is. So ladies and gentlemen, have a very good evening. Dr. Loice, thank you very much. And let's meet tomorrow for another presentation. Goodbye.